All right. Welcome to a silver lined relaunch. And you know those days that you wake up and you are on fire. Well, that happened to me today because I have somebody that is so special to me. She is near and dear to my heart. It literally is going to be electric, this conversation. Okay, so whatever you're doing, slow this down, slow the roll, ladies, slow the roll, guys. This is going to be on fuego. My dear friend is here, Andrea Michel, and wow, how fired up am I right now to have you and to have you share your significant relaunch. This episode is brought to you by the Fired Up Entrepreneur Program. And this is a program that we are so proud of. The results have been downright remarkable. And we want to invite you to get a glimpse of what it is like inside this program by inviting you to participate in the Business Boot Camp, which is a 5-day free event, and get involved with this because the pearls that we're going to be sharing each and every day are going to be the foundation for allowing you to make money, keep the money, grow the money, and strengthen not only your business, but also yourself. So please take advantage of this and join us at our next boot camp. You're listening to the Silver Lined Relaunch, and I'm your host, Hillary DeCesar, award-winning entrepreneur and transitional coach. Each week, I'll invite you to tune into inspirational stories, revealing how you too can turn ordinary experiences into the extraordinary. Feeling stuck? I'll share step-by-step strategies to fuel your ability to experience a life where silver linings are both abundant and possible. Welcome!
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And for me too, I felt the same way knowing that I was going to be seeing you and then talking to you today. I was like, oh, so excited. So I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're fellow coaches. We've been in a mastermind together. We have literally seen each other's companies explode. And when we first got on again today, I said to you, I've admired you from the day I met you down in, I think it was in Los Angeles. Was it Redondo Beach or something like that?
San Diego, I think.
San Diego. You're right. It was San Diego. And all I think of right now is us walking on the beach and the conversations on that deck where that gigantic butterfly that was very symbolic for me flew by. And I thought, you know what? I have a friend for life here. So here we go. For those that don't know your specific journey, your relaunch, you know how I like to give a platform to be able to share some of the things that you only sometimes get to share glimpses of in social media. And I want you to have an opportunity to dive into a significant relaunch and help us understand how those became silver linings for you.
Yeah. Again, thank you for the opportunity. You know, I have had so many relaunches in my life because, my entire childhood, well, I shouldn't say my entire childhood, but a good portion of my childhood was just riddled with trauma from the death of a sibling, the divorce of my parents, hunger, homelessness, poverty, sexual abuse, domestic violence, violence in the neighborhood, growing up in some of the roughest and poorest neighborhoods that as a matter of fact, Hillary, I counted a few years ago that for the first 10 years of my life, I lived at 10 different addresses. Like that's how often we moved as a kid and how unstable my childhood was. And so I've had so many, opportunities for the relaunch, if you will. But the one that I actually want to share today happened to me recently. And when I say recently, I mean within like the last year or whatever, because it was really a moment where I was truly triggered. And so I'm a trauma sensitive coach, and I'm currently working on my certification to be a trauma sensitive coach. And so what I've discovered is that a lot of us, we use the word triggered or trigger warning, to get people's attention, not necessarily because it's actually a moment that will trigger someone. But I had a moment a year ago, Hillary,
Okay.
where
But wait. Before we even jump into this moment,
okay.
First off, when we talk about in the first 10 years, you've had, death of a sibling, you've had divorce of your parents, you've had hunger, you've had, the sexual molestation, you've had all of these different things. You've had
Yes.
poverty, you've had,
Yes.
I mean, as a mom,
Mm-hmm.
and I think about this, under 10-year-old little
Mm-hmm.
girl going through all of these challenges, all of these things that most people, hopefully have never had to go through, right? Or
Right.
they go through one or two. And
Right.
as you said, it was just like, God, I went back and I started to add up all of them. It's like, I was kind of thinking about it. Is there one that didn't happen? Right.
Right.
You kind of have hit it. Hence the fact that, you're such an amazing coach, who, by the way, is going back and getting a PhD right now, everybody. Yes. I'm raising my hands if you're not watching this on YouTube right now. But I have to say, knowing you the way I know you, you wouldn't know that you have been through all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about triggers, I know we're going to go into that, but that little girl inside of you, right? We always talk about, that little girl inside of you, the different phases of before 10 years old. There might be like,
Right.
100 little girls inside of you below 10.
Right.
How do you, just before we dive into, the next part of this, but how do you allow yourself to be so joyous, so happy with where you are right now?
The simplest reason is I'm healed, right? I fundamentally believe that healing is the foundation for everything. And I believe that happiness, joy, love, peace, abundance, money, everything is a byproduct of healing yourself from your traumatic or unpleasant experiences. And so I have been on the healing and self-discovery journey for over 22 years now. I was 19 years old when I asked myself, not in a philosophical way, like, who art thou? But at 19 years old, I said, well, who am I? Because I had experienced so much trauma and so much tragedy, I really wanted to know, like, is this what life is about? Right? Like, is this why I
What a great
exist?
question.
To experience trauma after trauma, tragedy after tragedy, homelessness. And again, not only was I hungry and homeless as a child, but then as a young adult, maybe 18 years old, there was a summer where I was also homeless. And so it was like I found myself repeating the same cycles at 19. And thank God, thank the universe, thank spirit for having the presence of mind to ask myself, like, who am I? And again, it wasn't even that deep, right? It sounds like it was deep because I was 19, but when I asked myself that, it didn't feel that deep. It felt like there was something greater for me to be doing, and I needed to stop and really examine and ask myself, like, who are you? Who do you want to be? Like, do you want to be truly a product of your environment, or do you want to be something more? Clearly, I chose the something more route.
You know what I love, though, what you said is, I've heard it called the trauma loop. that
Mhm.
when we start to have one thing happen, then another, then we're actually looking for what else is going to happen, right?
Right.
What else? Hey, there's something more because this is just who I am. These are the
Right.
beliefs that you and I have talked a lot about in the past.
Yes.
But going into healing
Mm.
yourself, and
Mhm.
you've been on this personal journey since you were 19 years old, where you really stopped looking on the outside for
Yes.
solution and you started looking on the inside.
Mhm.
Can you, and I know that this, let's go back to now what you're doing with the triggers and you were starting down that path. Share with us that this most recent relaunch for you.
Yeah. So before I became actually, this is almost 2 years to the day that I actually retired from corporate America. So I spent 15 years successfully climbing the corporate ladder. And so in addition to experiencing everything that I experienced in the home life, there's also racism, there's also
Mm.
discrimination, there's also the prejudice, there's also all of these things. So at school, the home life wasn't solid, but then at school, the quality of education and the counselors, when I told them I wanted to do this because we were in a suburban school, all white school, we moved to the suburbs, it was, you can't do that. So, I had all of these forces that were basically coming at me, telling me, what I can or can't do or what I should and shouldn't do. And on paper, if I would have become a drug addict or in a mental health institution, on paper, it would have been like, well, what else could she have become because of her life experiences? So I spent 15 years successfully climbing the corporate ladder, battling, racism. Oh, you're here for affirmative action and all of that, which I wasn't. It was my qualifications. But anyway, so I almost 2 years to the day, I retired from a successful corporate career to do what I'm doing now, be an entrepreneur full time and coach people full time. And so,
Everyone, are you hearing this? Are you hearing, how similar the fact, you give up on the corporate, you end up tapping in to that zone of genius. And no doubt 2 years ago, I didn't realize, or I didn't remember how like that was not very long ago.
no,
My
I know.
and how much, girl, you have done so much. I'm like, I feel like a proud mom right now. I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
wow, okay.
I'm an executor. Like I
Mm,
execute on things. If
heck
if
yeah.
I see that there's the blueprint, it doesn't take me a lot of time, which is part of why at 19 I did ask myself, who are you? Again, not understanding the implications of even that question, but I execute. If I have an idea and it feels aligned for me, then I'm going to execute. I don't worry about success or failure because I don't believe that failure is the opposite of success. Failure is a part of the success journey. And so I would rather go out there, do something, and it not work out the way that I expect it to, than to sit back and have regrets. Because at this point in my life,
Mm,
I have absolutely no regrets. There is nothing that I can look back
mm.
on my life and say, oh my gosh, I regret this. So
I love that you just said that because replace failure with the word challenge.
yes, exactly.
Mm,
Exactly.
good.
So I, had retired at last year. At this point, I've been retired for a year. My husband and I, we built our home from the ground up. This office that I'm in, like I built it. We decided this was going to be my
Of course,
office.
of course you did that too. Let's add that to the list. Oh my goodness, how awesome. I
I
didn't know
know,
that
I know.
part. That part you haven't shared with me on that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
I need you to
yeah.
come visit me soon because I have
Yes.
I have a few things that I really could use some help with.
Oh my gosh, you're so funny. So, we built this house from the ground up. And so I was, made a lot of money in corporate and then I retired. And then there was a time, of course, where like there was no clients coming in. And I actually retired from corporate before I had reached the salary that I was making in corporate. So, retired from corporate and then my husband and I, we looked at the budget. Okay, we can do it this way, do it this way. But last year, Hillary, I went grocery shopping and my husband and I decided that we would just use cash, when we go to the good old hard cash, when we go to the grocery store, just to be on track from the budget because and you can probably appreciate this, when you have, money, like you don't worry about spending it. It's just like, I see it, I like it, I want it, I got it, right?
You put the card down and you do it.
And you do it, right? But so we said, okay, Andrea, you've been at this for a year and things aren't, you're not bringing in as much as you used to on your salary. So let's just be smart about it, right? You have to be smart. And so we decided we were only going to spend cash. And so this is my relaunch or defining moment. Hillary, I went to the grocery store and I wanted chicken Parmesan for dinner. And I have a great recipe. I, found it. And I went to the grocery store to buy the things for the chicken Parmesan. And I'm counting the money. And because I'm an accountant by trade, I still am an accountant, even though I'm not in corporate. Like I have this habit of, like, as I put things in the cart, just like mentally adding them up in my head. Okay, that's $8. That's $5. That's $13. Like that's my habit. But part of it is stemmed from being poor and only having like $5 in my checking account and not going over. And so it's twofold, right? Just the numbers counting in my head. I've always been attracted to numbers, but then also I didn't want to go over. So I'm in the grocery store and I'm adding everything up and I get to the cheese section where I'm going to grab my Parmesan cheese. And so I'm standing in front of the cheese freezer and I really love Sargento Parmesan cheese for me making, chicken Alfredo, right? It's like I just needed the Sargento. That's what I wanted in the moment. And this is when I say that I was triggered in that moment. Here's what I mean. I stood in front of the freezer and I had $22 in cash in my hand. And we agreed that I was only spending cash. And I calculated everything in my cart. And I couldn't afford Sargento cheese. And it was only $3.75. And I broke down and I cried right in the grocery store, standing in front of the freezer.
Wow, what a trigger.
Yeah. Right.
Going right back to when you were young.
That's exactly what happened. And Hillary, I could not, in that moment, I could not think straight. I literally, and my kids were with me. And thankfully, in that moment, they had ran to the candy aisle, because they had their own money. And when they have their own money,
I was going to say they cannot be taken out of the $22, not getting any candy if mama's not getting any of her Sargento cheese.
Right. We decided like a few years ago that we would give our kids their own money to go shopping. And I'm so glad we did that because before, when we bought everything for them, they asked for everything. But now that they have their own cash, they're like, I got $3. I can buy this one thing for $3, or I can buy something, or I can buy 3 things for $1 or 2 things for $1. So they're making better decisions, right? And so I literally,
hey, everyone who's listening who has kids, this is an awesome budgeting. This is amazing. You have an former accountant telling you, like, this is good. This is good information for your kids because yes, when they have a certain amount that they know they have, they don't ask for more.
No.
So great.
It's amazing, like the shift. And it happened almost immediately. As soon as we like, okay, here's $5, you can get what you want. And it took a couple of tries though, because they would like spend their money and they wouldn't have enough. And I'd be like, you gotta put something back. And I would let them know that I have the money, but it's my money, not theirs. So it really does work.
That was really good. Okay. So you're in front of the cheese, you've been triggered, you're crying, and you're breaking down.
Yeah. I literally went into breakdown mode and I couldn't think of my next step. And so I was crying. And again, what is time? I can't tell you whether it was 30 seconds or 30 minutes. I really don't know how long. I don't think it was that long because my kids still hadn't found me yet. So it hadn't been that long. But I literally, when I came to, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm literally crying in front of the grocery store. Thank God no one else saw me. Like no one was in that aisle at the time. And so I reached in the freezer and I grabbed I don't know, Crystal Farms Parmesan cheese, right? Because
Mhm.
it was on sale, right? Like $1.99 or something like that. Sargento was $3.75. The sale one was not, whatever, right?
Mhm.
And so Hillary, I paid, got up to the register, paid for it, and I sat in my car because at this point I had come to, right? And I was no longer in a state of being triggered. And that's why we have to be careful when we talk about people being triggered, because being triggered is an actual physical, mental, emotional response where you cannot think straight, right? You cannot think straight. And truth be told, Hillary, I had so many options available to me in that moment. I could have put back the pack of Oreo cookies. I could have simply used the checking account. And even if there was no money in the checking account, I could have used one of my 1,000 credit cards that I have, right? I had
Right.
so many options. But in that moment, I couldn't think of those options. All I knew was that I was poor all over again. And I'm like, how did I go from having everything, throwing myself a 40th birthday party, 2 days later, flying my family to Hawaii for 8 days, staying 2 minutes away from the beach in walking distance, to now I'm back in poverty again? Like that's where I went. And so I sat in the car, and thank God that I have worked on myself and I have the tools that I need so that when these events happen, that I don't stay there for very long. And so I sat in my car, and this is the relaunch period, the silver lining. I sat in the car and I said, Andrea, you have made a lot of money working in corporate. You have always made very good decisions. You've always made very good decisions. That is how you're in this situation again. What do you need to do to change the situation? And I sat in the car and I said, I will take all of the value that I've assigned to money and I will put all of that value on myself. And I will never, ever put money on a pedestal ever again. I will always be in control of money. It will not control me. And I drove home, and that was my resolve. And from that moment, I have never put money on a pedestal. And interestingly enough, more money seems to be flowing into me where I get money from, like, oh, a product that I had out there that I totally forgot. Like just the other day, there's a link that I have out there. I don't know where the link can be found because I thought I took it down. Someone found the link and they purchased some for me. And I was like, how did they find that? Part of me wants to ask them, like, how did you find that link? But then I sound like an irresponsible business owner. But that moment was a relaunch moment for me because I was so triggered. And I could have sat in my car and had a pity party and played the role of the victim and beat myself up. Oh, you're stupid from retiring and you knew your business, blah blah blah. But what good would that have been?
It's so powerful that, you, as you said, that you've stopped putting money on a pedestal, that you now can live your life and not have money be the driving force. And what I loved that you said is that, and I think that this is something that is so fascinating once you put it out there, that this is not going to happen anymore. This is not going to be what drives me. That you started to actually see things come in. You started to see the abundance. You started to see that, wait a second, money is just energy. Money's just there. And you were putting so much on it, so much value, as you said, onto actual money. This is money in itself right here, what you're sharing. So when somebody comes to work with you now, and you know that we all have triggers, until you deal with them, until you appropriately, really manage what happens with the thoughts turning into those feelings, it's going to continue to trigger you.
Right.
What's a step that we can share with the listeners? How do you even start people down this journey? Because I do agree with you. When you're triggered, you can't think. You're like a different person. You're in this cloud of yeah. And so how do you handle this with your coaching clients?
Well, first of all, we have to take the stigma away from people actually being triggered. And it is my philosophy that being triggered is a good thing, because today we're conditioned to believe that being triggered is a bad thing, right? Like, oh my gosh, you don't want to be triggered. And I'm not saying like I would have loved to not be triggered in that moment, right? I would have loved to not in the grocery store over $3.75 cheese. Would have loved that. Thank you very much. But I was. But the change that happened afterwards. So the first thing that we need to do is normalize triggering. The second thing is to understand that being triggered is not a bad thing, because when you are triggered by something, it is an indication that something is ready to come up, to be healed, and to be resolved. And it also means that you are ready for it in that moment. So that's the first thing that we do.
Wow. Okay, hold on. Normalize the trigger. Triggers are not bad. They are indicators.
Yes.
They are telling you, they are sharing you, they are letting you know that you are ready to start to really dig into it. God, that's so good, Andrea. That's so good. Yes, I 100% agree with you. And you so eloquently put it that way. That is so great.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, so we just have to, my goal is to really, truly normalize the healing process, which is why I always share my personal stories on my social channels, with my email list, on my podcast, because I want people to know that there's nothing wrong with healing yourself. There's also nothing wrong with having experienced trauma and having a desire to heal from that trauma. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And so we have to stop being so critical and judgmental of people who are deciding to heal from their trauma. Okay, so they have a breakdown in public. So what? They're healing, right? Okay, they may say something that's inappropriate. If you know that they're going through something and they're healing, forgive that. Don't hold on to it. Right? Because you holding on to it is only preventing your own growth. And so we have to normalize the healing process. We absolutely have to. And again, which is also why I decided to go back to school and become a doctoral student again, like getting my PhD in developmental psychology, because I know that all of us, whether we admit it or not, have experienced individual trauma and then also a collective trauma. And so
every single one of us,
all of us,
without a doubt. Yes.
All of us. Right. And so if nobody else is talking about healing and trauma, let me talk about it. Like I said, I don't have a problem with putting myself out there and being polarizing and being perceived the whatever black sheep or whatever you want to call it, because it is in alignment and in integrity with who I am as a human being.
I got to say, one of the things that I remember when I was in my own training, and it might have even been back when I was getting my degree in psychology, is that there's always a time when your subconscious believes that you're ready to start dealing with trauma. And that's why so many people are like, why is this coming up now? Why is this what's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. When you start to have things that are showing up more and more, it's actually your subconscious telling you that you're now ready. You're now ready to start to deal with it. And 100%. So I something else that you said that I thought about is, what is one person's trauma may not be somebody else's trauma. And when somebody else is traumatized by an experience, and you could even be with that person during the same
Yes.
experience,
Yes.
it doesn't hit you the same way. You're like, what the heck? It wasn't that big a deal. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So first thing is to understand that when it comes to our traumatic experiences, oftentimes, it's not the actual experience itself that creates the trauma, but it's how the people around us respond to it. Like the people who, so like for me, I was sexually molested as a little girl, and I can express this now, but I couldn't express it at 7, 8 years old. But it wasn't okay. So it happened to me, right? That was like terrible. But then it was like, oh my gosh, my mother didn't know. She didn't do anything, right? And she really didn't know. It's
Mm,
not that she didn't do anything. She just
yeah.
didn't know, but she was supposed to protect me. My father was supposed to protect me. The person who did it to me, they said that they love me and they
Mm,
violated me, right? So it's understanding that sometimes the experiences themselves is yes, it may be unpleasant. And just because an experience is unpleasant, it doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be traumatic. What can turn an unpleasant experience into a traumatic experience is how the people around us respond to it. So, like in the case that you just gave, like two people experiencing the exact same thing, and one person being like, oh my gosh, I'm mortified, and the other person being like, it's not that big of a deal. That person saying it's not big of a deal can create the traumatic experience for the other person who feels it deeply in their soul, like, oh, like this is terrible. And then to have someone that they love to say to them, like, it's not that big of a deal. It's like, oh my gosh, a betrayal, a violation. And so that can create the trauma around it. That's the first thing or second thing. I don't know where I am in my points. But another reason why people can experience trauma differently is because we are all different individuals, right? Like I had a girlfriend who couldn't watch you know how you're watching a movie and let's say the woman is sexually assaulted in a movie. She absolutely could not watch that.
mm.
But for me, even though I was molested as a little girl, like it meant nothing to me, right? So it's our past experiences that also shape how we perceive things in the moment and going forward. So that's why you can have two people to experience the same thing and have completely different reactions to the same thing.
This is why I love when we have conversations, because the way that you framed that, it's like people that are listening, you now realize so much that it's how others reacted and made you feel about the situation too. It's
Right.
so brilliant how you just did that. All right. Well,
I'm
okay.
brilliant, Hillary.
Yeah, hey,
Hello.
I actually do know that. Now, hopefully, others know that. But unfortunately, we are running out of time, and I know there's so much more that we were hoping to cover. But I would like to get into some rapid fire questions because I would like them to, as I mentioned, you're so filled with joy, you're so filled with happiness, you're so filled with all these things. So, one of my rapid fire questions is this. You chose to do a pretty big personal challenge this last year that consisted of exercise over a period of time. Can you share with us what you did and how long you did it?
I love this question. Yes. So last year, July, I decided that I would run a 5K every day until my 41st birthday. And so I actually did 94 days consecutively of running or walking a 5K every day until my 41st birthday. And it was an amazing challenge.
You know what I used to inspire me because I would see you and it would be like one of these times where I'm like, ugh, really? She did it again. And she's showing like you showed on your treadmill or on some device, like I did it and you were glowing. You're like, tough to get out there, but glad I did. I'd be like, okay, obviously I have to go do something now. So a little kick in the ass for me
Yes.
too. Okay. So what makes your chicken parm so good? What is the secret ingredient? And we know about Sargento now. We know the triggers. So I got to tell you, I didn't miss hearing that you have an amazing recipe, did I?
Oh my gosh, you're so
People,
funny.
people are probably like, did she really just ask that question? Yeah, I did. I did. I did. Because I know what we're all thinking. Like, what is the secret ingredient? Come on.
You know what? It's so funny because like I use heavy whipping cream is like what makes it really good. And honestly, instead of using like half and half or like a different like heavy whipping cream and then like seriously, Sargento cheese, Parmesan. Like
You're the best.
and making it with love too.
I need you to send me this because I don't put any of that cream or half and half in mine.
Are you serious?
No. So what you just said already is something I didn't know. Okay. All right. We got to, we digress.
I mean, if I said Parmesan chicken, I meant chicken Alfredo because it calls for
Oh,
Parmesan
okay.
cheese. Yes.
Okay. Cause I
Yes.
was like, how is she dumping a lot of cream?
No.
Or maybe I said it and I heard it and I'm like, all right, I want to know.
I may have said it. I may have said it because I'm like
So
Parmesan
chicken
cheese
Alfredo.
and chicken. Yeah,
Okay,
chicken Alfredo.
chicken Alfredo. I'm so glad I just asked because you know what? That is one of my go-to ultimate love. I still need your recipe. All right. So much has happened for you, right? Lots of good stuff. Lots of good stuff that's going on around you in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
If you could wave your wand, what is the one thing that you would love to have happen to you in the next 12 months?
The one thing I would love to have happen to me in the next 12 months. You know what? I actually started working with men. And so I would love in the next 12 months to be working with 12 men, in addition to the women that I work with.
Throw it out there. I love
yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I would love to work with more men, those who identify as men. I would absolutely love that in the next one.
Well, all of our male audience out there that's listening, you heard this. Yes. And I have to say, it's interesting. And I'm going to give you something as a coach. I do group coaching with women. I have not to this day found men that want to get into group coaching. They want one-on-one. So I think you're onto something.
I have my group coaching now, my mentorship. There's a guy in there and he shows up bigly and does the work. I mean, he shares.
Love that.
Yeah. So
he's got EQ. He's got a high level of EQ.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. What is your favorite beauty product by name? I know. And everyone is on pins and needles wanting to hear because this is literally one of the favorite parts of the show. And it is mine too.
My favorite beauty product, hands down, is Estee Lauder. Well, you kind of have to use them together. Like you can't use them like Estee Lauder's cleanser and moisturizer. That's multi-effect. So they're multi-effect cleanser and moisturizer. And I got to throw this out there if I can give a third one is Estee. Well, I love Estee Lauder skincare. I don't think you can go.
Okay, can
wrong.
We just right now tag Estee Lauder? We need to have you as their, brand ambassador here. We got you. We got you covered.
Yes. Like seriously, they have a and I don't know if it's oil-based or what, but they have a cleanser, which is also a makeup remover. And literally you put it on your face at the end of the day and it literally removes all of your makeup. It's just so perfect. So
I'm getting it because I right now just ran out. I've been using these wipey things that weren't doing anything for me. Nothing.
I don't like wipes.
Nothing. And the mascara was like glopping down. I look like the raccoon. All right. Very cool. Last but not least question. What does Powerhouse of Possibility mean to you?
Wow. Powerhouse of Possibility. It means that you have no limits. There is nothing that binds you, it also means that you are nothing and everything all at the same time.
Do you realize this is a mirror question? When you say what powerhouse of possibility, it's mirroring back exactly
Yep.
who you are. And you are
Exactly.
that, no doubt. Okay, so how can people find you, get in contact with you? What's the best way?
So they can find me at andreamichel.com. And then also they can find me on Instagram at Andrea Michel Consulting. But I will probably change my handle to the Andrea Michel because I'm doing less consulting, more coaching. So my handle will be in more in alignment. They can find me on Facebook at Andrea A. Michel. It's my business page. Not really active on Twitter or the other platforms.
You're the best. And we will also have this interview, the show notes over at therelaunchco.com under podcasts, where you can get a link to these fabulous beauty products as well as link to my dear friend. Andrea, thank you for being here so much. What an inspiration you are to me and to everyone else out there. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me.
You're the best. Take care. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Silver Aligned Relaunch. If I said something today that resonated with you, will you please head over to iTunes right now and leave us a 5-star review and share this episode with others and help them find the silver linings as well. And don't forget, you can have immediate access to the show notes, any giveaways, and the links to those amazing beauty products at therelaunchco.com/podcast. Until next time, there's always a silver lining, and now is the time to hit the reset button to relaunch those transitions into transformations.